Yeah, we had it working. The mayor's was working. Mine was working. So I'm on a laptop. He was on a laptop. So that's what made me think, oh, we're good to go. But apparently not. So, okay, we are live. Amy's with us. So I'll turn it over, Amy, to public health and safety.
She's muted.
Amy, you're muted. There you go.
Okay, I'm having all kinds of issues with mine tonight. Okay, I'm going to call to order Public Health and Safety Committee. I have a couple of items on the agenda tonight. I did talk with Mark Chappell today. I don't know if he's joining us, but there was a good possibility he wasn't going to make it in time due to an appointment he had. But anyways, this is pretty simple. First item, 2020 FEMA assistance to firefighter grant. This is, let me see, no, this isn't the state one. Hold on one second. Okay, the FEMA grant is, there's no cap on it. He said that you can get up to, you can ask for up to $70,000. There is, however, a 5% match. This grant particular, he said that he's looking for about 20 sets of turnout gear, which is, needed. Again, there is a match for this, but you do not receive any more than $70,000. This is the FEMA grant. Does anyone have any questions on this?
Yeah, I'm all for this, but how approximately is the turnout gear per set?
About 2,500.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and about 20 sets, he said. So, okay, next item would be the 2021 SFM Fire Department Equipment Grant. He said this as well is he wants to use for turnout gear. He said such as helmets, boots, and gloves. There is a cap of $15,000 and there is no match for this particular grant. So it would also be for equipment, different type of equipment, and the cap on that is $15,000 with no match. Any question? Okay, seeing no questions, we'll go ahead and move that one forward as well. Any management updates from the administration?
Amy, if you look at that last grant you talked about on the sheet, that's really due by the 31st of January, which will be before the meeting. I encouraged him to go ahead with that, but I want council to understand that he does have to send that in before the meeting.
Okay.
On that,
so could that be something then would we be able to approve at finance?
Well, if there may be other things that we need to work on also, so we'll wait and see how this goes.
Okay. Okay.
But he's got these started, and there's the one is in pretty good shape. The other one he has more time on.
This brings up an interesting question I've not really understood. Applying for a grant, is it technically required that council approve just the application for a grant? For example, people could apply for a grant and we could not accept it. Because this has come up before where we're rushing to get a grant. In fact, last month, I think, at the last minute, we had an item added to our regular agenda so that we could get a grant.
It happens regularly with fire grants. The windows are usually small on those, and they get them late. But this one grant he found out about by talking with someone else who applied for one and got it.
Yeah.
He wanted to go ahead on it.
No, my question is, do we have to, it seems like it's well, I don't know if it's unnecessary action for council to approve just the application of a grant. I would like to, it would be great if we could just have people apply for grants without getting our permission. Then we don't have to worry about, rushing to get things done at the last minute when a grant comes, appears. So I wonder if that's something to look into for the future to see if there's ways we can streamline the process and not have it go through our, committee structure for a vote just to apply for a grant.
Unless, what about if it's a match or if there's any type of money?
Again, we could say no when the grant's awarded.
You wouldn't want to do that. Most of the grants require the mayor's signature, and it's basically a contract that you're applying for the grant. Plus you have the ones that have the match requirement. We're technically saying, yes, we can have this money. If we were awarded a grant and then turned it down because of a 5% match, chances are whatever entity that grant was through, we would have a very difficult time applying for more grants.
Yeah, that's true too, because when you don't accept the money after it's awarded to you, that's like a big red flag on the organization.
And the department heads really don't have the authority to apply for that grant and provide the match without the mayor's authority.
Yeah, I don't, well, that's the question I'm asking, whether or not that is the case, or whether we could make it the case that, for example, up to X number of matching grant dollars, certain individuals can apply for grants without council approval. I know, for example, we established a thing with the Parks and Recs a few years ago where they can actually draft contracts for certain things without getting council approval. So I'm just wondering, and I get your point, Cheryl, we don't want to go rogue. We don't want anybody in the city go rogue and start applying for grants that we would never want to accept. But I just wonder if there's some other way we can structure this, because this comes up fairly often where we're rushing to get approval just to apply for a grant. Anyway, just a thought I had.
Yeah, the other thing that we need to be careful about are a lot of different grants have different restrictions tied to them. And we want to be very careful that we don't get backed into a corner with some grant restriction that we weren't aware of, or that somebody missed when they applied for the grant, and that we can't hold up to that restriction.
It's true. And that could happen even if we do approve one, because think about what we're faced with. The last minute approval of an application means we may not check all the, requirements ourselves.
Well, and that brings up a good point on, a lot of the stuff that we receive. I feel like we get it very last minute and don't really have time to look it over, review it, do any research before we're deciding on stuff in meetings. It seems that a lot of stuff gets to be rushed through. The fire department grants and stuff I know are a quick turnaround. Most grants.
Well, this one especially, this is one that we've talked about year over year. AFG is a big grant with no cap actually. So they're looking for that 5% so that they know that you got some buy-in into the piece.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And if this is a grant we regularly apply for, again, it just seems like an unnecessary step to have to get council approval just to apply. But I don't know. I haven't really looked into it. I just raising the question just so, especially those, because I know, for example, we'll talk about another grant that we're reapplying for, potentially reapplying for, that, that Judy is, going crazy over. And I just worry that sometimes we're unnecessarily creating stress when we could streamline it a little better. But anyway, just a thought.
and I think you're right on some of those ones like the EMS grant that's every year. That we can expect. The AFG grant, I think, is another example. That's it's the same calendar year. The pandemic threw things off a little bit, but typically it's going to be the same time. And the same with the state fire marshal's grant. So.
Okay. Is that all of the management updates that we have?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I am going to go ahead and end this committee, and I'm trying to see what time it is.
5:52.
5:52. Thanks.
5:52. Okay, at 5:52, I will call the Streets and Sidewalks Committee meeting to order. We have 2 discussion items on the agenda this evening. The first discussion item is resurfacing of South Freedom Street, the brick road section. I know this has been talked about in the past, but it was brought to Mr. Finney's attention again to take a look at some possibilities. So he put some descriptions together for everybody and some different options. And again, this is just open for discussion this evening.
And I sent this around. I don't know if anybody else had asked people who live on Freedom Street, but I actually sent the image to a few folks on Freedom. And I was surprised with the response I got. And they liked option B out of all of these, so which I thought was surprising, because a couple of years ago we were talking about what it would take to resurface all of the brick and keep the historical look of it. So I was just curious, had anybody sent that to anybody who lived on Freedom, or not necessarily that they're the sole deciding factor, but I was just curious.
Actually, that's a good idea, Andrew, to maybe reach out to some of the residents in that area.
Yeah, because I know I've heard that people hate. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. No, it's okay. I just picked this up today out of my mailbox. So no, I didn't have any opportunity, but I do know a few people that do live right there in that area. So, that's something maybe I will definitely do myself, just to get some feedback.
And Dr. Calfee, this was kind of born out of a conversation you had with Mr. Finney, but was there?
Well, if we look at it, this section of Freedom needs repaired. It is in many places very rutted. We've got some holes in it. We've got unevenness in other places. But it's a historical street too, the brick street. Those of you that have been around a while, I think remember when it was rebuilt, where they actually took the bricks and took them up and relaid them. I think we're past the point where we can do that. I think we need to look to improving it, and it's going to take some discussion because a lot of people have opinions about it. Strong opinions. I think when the different plans were put together, the option B replaces the roadway with asphalt all the way through, and then retains bricks that are good ones and puts them into crosswalks at each of the corners on the street. And that will maintain some historic connection to the old street. It also will give us a new street that we need. The prices vary widely there, you can see, but it would be a big project. It would also include driveway aprons, new curbs throughout the 2-block area. I just think that we need to move forward on it. I've had a number of residents that have talked with me about the condition of the street. As it is now, the plow trucks have a hard time plowing it because of the unevenness. You got to hold the blade up a couple inches off of the bricks to do that. That's an issue. With frost heaving, especially the first section there from the light down to the first corner gets very bad. So I know I'm rambling on a little bit, but I think if it hadn't been for the brick street, I think it would have probably been higher on our list for repaving than it is now. And I think it's time for us to address it.
Going off of what you were saying, Mr. Calfee, or a question for Mr. Finney, I guess, the little stripes of brick that you have for the crosswalk, do you think you could utilize some of the brick and put them elsewhere within the city and kind of replicate that?
Oh, yeah, possibly. The concern is when we start removing the brick that they're going to crumble or they're already cracked in many places. But, we certainly could add that into the contract that the bricks have to be salvaged and possibly dumped at the street garage or something, kept at the street garage, the ones that aren't used in the crosswalk, if that's the option that we choose.
I have a question just about the lifetime of the asphalt compared to the lifetime of the brick. I know that the asphalt's a lot cheaper, but that has to be done much more often, correct? As far as repairs and such?
Yeah, we get in our town with the average daily traffic on that section of road, it would be fair to say 15 years, possibly 20 years. Linden and Highland, for instance, I did that, and I put the surface on Highland Avenue from Freedom to Linden in spring of 2001. So we're 20 years on that road, and there's some issues, but that's from water breaks. And then we have other streets that have a high average daily traffic that don't hold up as well. So, generally speaking, we're somewhere 12 to 15 years on a surface. I might think a surface is adequate. You might think it's not adequate. The question with the brick, the brick's been on that street for 120 years, but when did it truly fail? When did it become a burden to travel? And in my 20 years with the city, it's lived its life probably twice. So brick streets do tend to hold up to a point, but when they meet their expiration, it's time. And obviously, just like the concrete roads in Ward 4, they were placed in the early 70s. They really lived their life 15, 20 years ago, but it just took us this long to get around to replacing them. Asphalt, the benefit of asphalt is it is a little less expensive for us to repair, and our street department actually can make asphalt to make repairs with their own material that they make.
Thank you.
When we look at it,
I will say,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
To find a contractor that will lay brick, we will more than likely have to find a contractor from out of the area. The one project that Pat from my office pulled quantities from was a Cincinnati project. So it's just not something that's done regularly in our region.
Does Chaffee still do that, or anyone similar to them?
Well, they'll all make repairs to the brick roads to that degree, but to lay brick for 900 feet full width, matching grade, it's just not something that they want to do, most generally.
And it's really not cost effective in the least.
Well, it's expensive, and to find bricks that actually are made for street, that's another issue too. These bricks were made differently than bricks that you would build a house with.
Yes.
They're kiln fired and treated a certain way that, again, it's just not a common item in our region with the winters that we have. And I would say, City of Kent has done some brick crosswalks. They don't hold up. They will heave, the plows will hit them. So it would be a constant maintenance item. So that's something the council has to accept, that in a few years, we might be redoing it. Nostalgically, yes, it looks nice. But I will warn you, even our brick streetscape, I've paid thousands of dollars to have some repaired, removed, the resanded, put back, and you can't tell that I did it 5 years ago. That's just my opinion. But
And-
again, I understand the nostalgic look and I have no problem doing it.
And I was thinking more along the lines of, traffic calming, but maybe it doesn't have to be brick. But that's probably a conversation for a different day. But obviously with brick, when you hit that, you probably slow down a little bit. And with some complaints that we've had, especially over on the
Yeah.
Highland Avenue, it'd just be a different texture that you might slow down. But
Bob, if we select bricks that are good, because if you look at the street, many of the places where they've heaved up, they're crumbled, they're broken, they're chipped, but there are some sections that are really pretty good brick still. If those are the bricks that are selected for the crosswalk, would they be set on a concrete base to add stability and maybe a greater lifetime to how that they would stay in there for being set and level and firm?
It would certainly help out. It'll keep them from moving, yes. And that's what I would recommend is support for concrete. But if they're not on a foundation 3 feet deep, they're still subject to the heave in the road or any surface. And the road freezes faster than the ground, as we all know.
I guess too, as we're looking at them, then one of the choices is the concrete for the entire street. And that is one of the more expensive choices, the 300,000. But it would be a street that our concrete life that we get on it is 40 years. Is that where we are?
It's 30 to 40 years is acceptable, yes. And a lot of that is the maintenance that we perform throughout the years, keeping the cracks sealed. Now, we would build this road as we're rebuilding the roads in Ward 4, similar to the way that highways are built, with a lot of rebar tying all the joints together, which is what Ward 4 did not have.
Do we have a way, or do we want to survey the residents on Freedom Street before we go any further with this? I know we're not going to make any decisions tonight, but I think their input would be valued, and I think there are a lot of people out there that would have something to say. Just what would be the best way to reach out to them?
I think just dropping off a flyer with contact information might be the simplest way.
Door to door.
Because it's, like you said, not very long stretch, and could certainly do that. But I also, if there's a way just to add it, if we're going to actually reach out to individuals, just add it to the website and direct people there. Because I know that there's multiple people, myself included, that many times avoid Freedom Street. I don't drive a very big car, so if I don't want to bottom out, then I'm not going to take Freedom. So there's probably multiple other people like that as well that would like to have their input, even if they don't live on Freedom.
If it's on the website too, it gives us the opportunity, we can share it on social media and get it out there too. That way it hits more residents.
You think that might be an option, Bob?
Well, let me ask this. Are we trying to please the residents, or are we trying to please the homeowners on that street that maintain their homes in a historic nature?
Well, I would think
Who
it'd
are
be
we
a little
trying
bit
to
of,
please?
I think it's both.
I think it's both, because although there's people that live on that street, that it's taxpayer dollars. So, everybody's going to want some feedback, or people that really see the historic detail in Ravenna that don't live on Freedom, they might have some feedback as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just feedback. It's just nice to know. I mean, if we don't want to sit here and stress over replacing the brick if no one cares about the brick. So why even have the discussion? So it's kind of nice to know, I think.
Yeah, I think sometimes we might end up setting ourselves up if we just ask a certain contingent. I mean, obviously they live there and they have more of a stake in it. But what happens on another street where the residents say, well, nobody asked me about how our street should be repaved. Maybe
And
that's a struggle.
I think also at the same time, we should be thinking about Sycamore. if we're going to take care of South Freedom, I think we need to take a look at taking care of Sycamore in the same time frame sense. If we're going to put surveys out there, maybe put it out there for both streets.
Well, and we did Prospect fairly recently, though. That's another brick laid street, right?
Yes.
There were repairs made as part of the water line project.
Oh, okay, so it was just repairs.
Just repairs, correct.
I wasn't around.
North Prospect Street was not, it was not nearly in as bad condition as Freedom and Sycamore.
Yeah.
It was salvageable as it was.
I was just going to say, I wasn't around for the previous discussion of when the street was rebuilt. The bricks were relaid. What was the time frame for that? And was it done because there was a hue and cry that people wanted to maintain the brick street?
That made a big that was a huge factor by itself, that they wanted to keep the historic look, even though it took a lot longer, it was a lot bigger expense. There's a lot of the residents wanted it to be kept historic. And I remember that quite well when that was done. It's quite time extensive as well.
Do you recall the time frame of it?
Which street are you talking about, Tim?
My understanding is that on Freedom Street, that some of those bricks were relayed in a rebuild project a number of years ago.
That was the water line project. And yeah, it was decided, and I'm guessing 1991, 1993, when the water line was installed in the road.
Okay.
That the intent was to put the bricks back, and that's what they did.
Okay, so it wasn't a complete rebuild of the street
Yeah.
to maintain it. Okay.
Correct.
Any other input at this time? If not, we'll go ahead and table this, but I'll work with Mr. Finney, and we'll try to reach out to residents in the area and watch for feedback from other residents and compile some data and get back to everybody. Next item up for discussion was the turnaround at Woodbend that was approved last month. So I'm not sure where this discussion is going to go, but we can go ahead and open that up. I know that there are approximately 32, 33 other roads in town that have dead ends that has been supplied to us that we can possibly take a look at for future renovations. But other than that, is there any specific discussion about this from anyone else?
Well, I mean, I can clarify. I mean, when this came up for a vote last week, I brought up that there were 2 residents who were concerned about doing this project. Now, obviously, this is all moot because it was approved, and I respect that. But I think the concerns that I have and that the residents have is why this turnaround, when you just mentioned there's so many others in the city, and there may be some unique qualities to this, and I agree there probably are. Ultimately, I do think the safety and efficiency of our road crew to plow and other work that requires them to turn around is really important. I just thought it deserved a little more discussion before we voted on it. But now that it's voted on, the problem is I've been recontacted by people saying, well, I live in a similar situation. When do I get my turnaround? And I think we're facing that dilemma. You know, if we do it for one, there's a perceived privilege for doing it for one and not another. Not to say we won't do it for other places, But perhaps what we need to do, in my opinion, and I don't know if others will agree, is kind of develop a more cohesive plan about, where it's more important to do. I mean, I can see Woodbend is pretty long, and a turnaround there is probably more important than some of the others listed on that, whatever list we have. But maybe we could develop some criteria. I mean, if we have to acquire property or get easements or stuff like that, that might be an inhibiting factor. If we already own the land, it probably makes it easier, like in this case. But at least to answer questions from residents when they pose them, why did you do this one and not mine? We might have some more specific criteria to point to. In this case, I don't know that we have that, and that's what I think poses a little bit of a problem.
I agree, Rob, that we need to set up a criteria in general to address all of the roads if there's any issues with them. Part of the criteria, and something that I would like to see, regardless of how soon or far we get into this, I would like to see something from our street department and our safety forces as to their opinions and how do these areas affect their ability to do their jobs. I do understand how difficult, and I watch when they come down my street and back all the way up with a plow, or when they have the chipper trailed on the back of a truck like they did today. I have a slight curve in the road, and it's a pretty long way to back up. I feel bad for them. Does it bother me if people turn around in my driveway? No, it doesn't. But I want to know how our workers are dealing with it, and if it's a problem for them, or do they see a solution that would make their jobs easier? And then we can address the situations with more information.
And those are all valid points, and I can work with Mr. Finney and his staff to generate a list of needs with these streets, and which ones, may be feasible, more feasible than other ones, which ones may need quicker attention, and put a plan into place for these other roads and see where it goes.
I can say that some dead ends are extremely short, and it's not that difficult to go forward and then having to back in for snow removal. And I know as far as Woodbend goes, one problem with a lot of residents turning around their driveways, they've made comments in the past years of possible concrete cracking. When you add the weight of a plow by itself, you're adding approximately, depending on the width, approximately another ton of weight on the front end of that particular truck by itself. So the reason I'm saying that, if you add a cul-de-sac, that way that eliminates all that, and it makes it much easier to maneuver the truck around, whether it's with just a plow or whether it's another type of trailer in the back of a truck, whether it's utility trailer or a chipper by itself, as was mentioned. And there are, like I said, some dead ends are so short that it probably wouldn't be that feasible. But in this case, it's city-owned land, so that's would be a huge advantage in that. And then going in and out of a driveway, some people have not just mailboxes there, but sometimes other decorative things toward the end of the driveways to be careful so nothing is bumped or moved in some cases. I don't know of anything offhand that's ever been done over the years, but just to make sure it's a lot easier to maneuver different types of vehicles. And that way, if people say my concrete was cracked, that way there's not that possible liability problem. And I realize there's several other dead ends.
Well, and I can say our street department, especially the plows, my neighbor has their apron poured 8 inches deep purposely because we are at one of those dead end situations.
Yes.
He has told city employees, please feel free to turn around in my driveway. They won't do it because they know that it's a liability if one of those trucks damages private property. They won't turn around in our driveways with the city equipment. That's not my concern. And if somebody turns around in my driveway with a regular car, it's not going to hurt anything. I don't think that we should pay the money to do a cul-de-sac if we can just throw down some asphalt for a simple turnaround for our safety forces and our street department. I think a cul-de-sac is more than what we should put, especially if we're looking at Woodbend specifically, that was drawn up to be a through road. And so I think doing the turnaround is good for our street department and our safety forces. I don't think we need to do any more than that at this time.
It brings up an interesting point. I mean, first of all, the practicality of it is that it's not just, snow plows and city vehicles, it's delivery trucks, it's any number of things that could be impacted there. Whether it's the city's responsibility, I don't know. But I agree with Cheryl. It's not really a liability issue because I live in the same kind of situation, and the snow plows would never, none of the city vehicles would ever use somebody's driveway, even if they were conscientious enough to build strong driveways. But I mean, there's a historical factor to this. You mentioned, Cheryl, that the street was supposed to be a thoroughfare. So, I think there's some resentment from some people that just because those residents at the time decided, and the developer, not to go all the way through to Main Street, they kind of created this situation, and then the city has to step in and pay for the resolution. And I think that just rubs some people the wrong way and creates that resentment about their own streets. So I'm just suggesting we have some criteria. Certainly, obviously the police, the fire, and the building department need to weigh in. They're the experts and so forth. But I think when we have justification, when somebody says, well, why not my street? And we say, well, here's the plan and yours is lower on the priority list, then hopefully they'll understand. Some will never understand, obviously. But at least it shows that we've put some time and effort into deciding which ones we've done. I feel that Woodbend was just put in here, and I don't know and I'm sure the building department and the street department, put time and effort and thought into it. I just don't think it's been explained to the public or to the council, to be honest with you.
Well, if there's even a consideration of putting asphalt in, we'll just get a cost on what it would be to put in a base and to go from there with the asphalt, if that would be a considerable direction.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody's input. It's been very helpful, and I think we've come to a consensus that more planning needs to be done with the rest of those roads in the city, and that we will definitely move forward with that plan. Do we have a management update?
Just to comment on this, I think that Mr. Finney did give an estimate on building a turnaround, not a cul-de-sac, just a turnaround. And I thought the figure was $13,000 on that. The other thing that we can do when you're looking at developing these plans, and we'll be glad to help with it, as we identify all of these and the ones that can potentially be helped, and then build 2 or 3 of them into each year into the long-range plan, the plan for paving within the city.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Thank you. All right, it is 6:19, and I will adjourn the Streets and Sidewalks Committee meeting.
Okay, at 6:19, I will call to order the Planning Committee meeting. Got a few items on the agenda. One item that was originally on will be taken off, but we'll start off with the annual contract for indigency representation. Again, this is sort of like the yearly contract that we offer so that we can make sure indigent people who get fair legal representation. I don't think anything about the contract has changed. I think the fee, if I recall, is $150.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So there's nothing changed here. I don't think we have much choice but to go ahead and move this forward for approval unless anybody has any questions about what this is.
My only question on reading the contract, it says that it's the pay on it is the sum of $150 per charge shall constitute payment for services rendered. Is that each time the lawyer represents them, or is it a charge for the entire process with them? If you don't have the answer, that's okay. I just thought as I read it, kind of like you were mentioning, what is the charge that they're paying? But that was my only thought.
I was rereading it and I wanted to compare it to last year to make sure the fee was the same, but I kind of had the same question, but I don't have an answer.
Okay.
I suppose Mr. Semino would be best to answer that. And maybe
Okay.
you get an answer from him either next week or next month when we vote on it. Okay, unless there's objection, we'll go ahead and move that one forward. The second item is an authorization to apply for a grant. And there was a flood of documents today and late last week about this. So if you recall, we applied for a grant. There's land available for purchase near where the railroads cross over near Emerald Lake. Where that development is, and the developer, the owners of Emerald Lake, own that property. They came to the city last year to see if we were interested in purchasing the property, and in the process of doing that, applying for a couple of grants. One would actually pay for the property itself. At the time we did go forward, we applied for the grant. The only expense was a few $1,000s for the appraisal of the land. That was a requirement of one of the grants. So council did authorize, I can't remember the exact figure, $3,000 to $5,000, I think, for the appraisals. They were done. We applied for the grant, and as Cheryl predicted, we didn't get it, but we were close apparently. And Judy Watkins is asking us to reapply for this round for, I believe, the same grant. Now, I haven't had time today to review all of the documents that she sent, but I do believe one of her questions is whether she is a person authorized to sign. I don't know. I asked her I sent her a message asking for the deadline, and I didn't get a response. So I don't know. I don't know if Mary, you know when this is due or any of those details.
Well, this is another one. She got a call from the gentleman that puts this together, and he's, I don't know if he's waited long, but it's another thing on the fast rails here. But there ought to be a paper trail of all this stuff. That wasn't that long ago. That was last fall, I think, wasn't it?
It was late summer, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So as to who signed what, that there ought to be some record of that, because there's 2 or 3 documents that have to be signed for this. And I did talk to Judy today, and she did not recall, but I know that Brian has been asked to sign one stating that we would have the money. I guess once again, it's to show that you have genuine interest in the place, but they want to know that you're solvent. Is what you're after.
Keep in mind with the Clean Ohio, you are certifying that you have the funds, and I know Judy had planned on getting the EPA grant to go along with the Clean Ohio. But if you don't have the other grant in place and not awarded, and you would get this one, then the city will have to uphold that percentage that they certify.
Well, I think
25%, I think.
I think both, there's 2 grants mentioned in the paperwork.
Right, but she didn't get one.
Right. I remember that. That was the one that we
That was
paid.
It was the big one, wasn't it?
I remember us paying, oh, how much was that? We paid for the gentleman.
We did.
Didn't we pay for him to write the grant or?
No, this fee would have come out at the end from the grant itself. It would have been, this was a no cost other than the appraisal, which I assume still holds. So no additional costs at this time. Assuming all the pieces work, we would get one grant to pay for the 25% of the larger grant, and then the larger grant would pay for the actual purchase of the property. And the property, I believe what I was reading today is 75% of the assessed value. And I don't know, I don't recall ever seeing the appraisal to see what that number is. I think the key elements here, this is just a second round of doing this since we didn't get it the first time. And the consultant is convinced, he was very convinced, I can't remember his name, I apologize. He was very convinced that we would get it the first time and we didn't, but we were close. And I think even back then when we didn't get it, there was some sense that we would try again. Now, if there's no cost, I don't see any downside in reapplying. But I just, this was kind of my first day back at my regular job and just didn't have time to sift through everything that was sent today. So I don't know exactly what's at stake here. My suggestion, and that's why I wanted to know what the deadline was, is that assuming we can get this all done in a regular fashion, going through the committee of the whole and then voting on it in February, that's what we would at least put this on track to do. And as we go through the process, if things are uncovered that makes us want to back out of even applying, we certainly have time. But at this point, I would like to see us go ahead and go through the process, learn more about it. And again, I think there was a consensus of the council that this was a good idea if we got these grants. It would provide this preservation area. It wouldn't be the kind of thing where we could put ball fields in and stuff like that and develop it. It's pretty much an as-is recreation area, but we felt it would be a good addition to the city to purchase that or at least acquire that land. I don't know if people have different opinion from the summer when we discussed this. We could certainly talk about it some more. But if not, my suggestion is we move it forward. We try to sort out all the details for the second round and then decide in February or sooner if we have to act sooner at a special meeting to vote on.
There's a Parks and Rec meeting next Tuesday. So maybe Mr. Calfee can fill in the gaps there when he attends that meeting. The gentleman's name also is Neil. And talking to Judy a while ago about this when the grant didn't come through, she was still excited because out of the point system, and Cheryl, you might be able to fill in the gaps here, I'm not too sure, but they said they were only 1.5 points away, I believe is what the number was. We can check again next Tuesday when we speak to Judy, but it was really close in terms of overall.
On the competitive grants, it's very common to lose out completely on funding by 1 or 2 points. That's why it's so important to look at your scoring criteria and know what you need to have in order to meet those criteria points.
So I know there were some conversations at the county level, I think. There were some issues there to answer some of those questions you were talking about, Cheryl.
And on Clean Ohio, it's tough because there are definitely certain things, certain criteria that they are looking for specifically. And if it's not there, it's not there. You can't create a habitat that doesn't exist. So it's tough. They're very competitive.
And that's an important question because if we didn't get the grant the first time around, it's valuable sometimes to get the feedback from the grant agency. But as Cheryl says, if we just reapply and don't make any changes, and maybe we can't, why would we assume we get it this time? That's the downside. The upside is if it doesn't cost council anything or city, why not give it another try? Maybe with the other competitors for the grant, we may score better. I don't know.
In my understanding, we can certainly find out next Monday. By next Monday, but there was some kind of pipe that was going through that that area. And there was a what if scenario if it's owned by the county, as I understand it. And the what if scenario was if it had to be replaced, what's the plan for that? Who's going to do it? And I believe the county had a lease on it too. So what happens if it ruptures after the lease? Those kinds of what if questions that needed to be answered at a county level between Neil and Judy and whoever at the county, the engineer.
That's my recollection too, Andrew, that the discussion of what was the problem with the grant is that concern with the pipe underneath the pond area there and what would happen. Judy at her meeting last month of the park board talked repeatedly on how close the grant was to being funded. And so her belief was that we're in really pretty good shape to go forward with it. My understanding, and I hope it is true, that it's still set up exactly the way it was, that one grant is going to provide the money to pay our portion and the other grant's going to pay for the whole purchase. Because, if that is not the way that it's going to operate this time, then I have a concern about it. And as I was looking at one of the documents we got today was a letter that was the non-binding letter of intent. And as you read through that, kind of at the bottom, it says, if these conditions happen and it's executed, the city within 1 year will purchase this land. And, there's some fine print there, but it just gave me a little pause as I read it, that I wanted to make sure that it was in the right way, that we're not getting into a liability there with that. So that said, I don't think that that's happening at all, but
Well, I mean, the letter you're referring to does specifically say in the paragraph before that the purchase is contingent upon the city receiving financing in the full amount from,
yes.
So yeah, I didn't have too many concerns there, but of course, we're going to want to have, our legal experts review any documents before we proceed into something like this. But yeah, I think there's still some unanswered questions. I don't think we should just assume we should just go forward without having a little more information, have some more time to digest some of this documentation.
Yes.
Overall, I think the one question I really want to know is, when is this due? Because, I don't want to be stuck in a situation where we have a special meeting next week to vote on it if we haven't had time to really review it. So hopefully we'll get that answer from Judy soon.
Rob, and ask where we are on the WRRSP grant, because that was the matching grant. And I thought that was the one that was applied for previously.
Well, we applied for both previously.
All right, because the Clean Ohio funds are typically usually the applications are due January, February, reviewed early spring and awarded. So I didn't think the timing was right on that, but they could have done a second round last year.
I'll reach out to Judy and ask those other questions about the specific deadlines and applications for both grants and see what she says.
And I was wondering, will the Parks Department have the responsibility of maintaining that if this does go through and acquired?
Yes.
So do they have enough employees at the present time to do what they're doing, plus maintain that whatever needs to be done on a daily basis?
Well, I'm not sure what maintenance would be required. Remember, this is like a preserve. It's like we're not really going to go and do a whole lot of of enhancement to it. We're really restricted from doing that. Another issue, though, might be security, because I think one of the problems is that people have been known to pitch a tent on the property. So it may go beyond just Parks and Rec when it comes to maintaining the area, maybe higher level of police involvement in observing the area.
And the one thing that they're going to have to, with these funds, if they're awarded, somebody will have to be knowledgeable and trained. They will have to remove any type of invasive species that's not natural to that habitat. So there will be probably some type of training expense, and somebody who will have to keep an eye on things to make sure that they stay within the guidelines of the programs.
And not I agree with what Rob mentioned about the security, but also anywhere you go, there's people that don't pick up their trash or just dispose of it improperly. And that's another thing that I was thinking about. If that happens, then someone or some people to go and see if that's maintained or pick things up, have containers where things could be disposed properly.
I'm wondering, Mayor, if we could have Judy maybe attend Monday's meeting, if and when it comes up with the committee of the whole, that maybe she can answer what the plans are with regards to what Paul, Cheryl, Tim are all asking.
She needs to know the questions ahead of time with that, because she's going to have to get them. Keep in mind, there's a gentleman who's doing this grant, and he's doing it for the benefit of another gentleman who found him with that. So the true recipient of the funds on this is the fellow that owns that property at this point in time with that. And I think the other gentleman that writes these kind of grants was probably hired by that gentleman to do that, to set this up with that. And for the most part, Judy's going to have to communicate with him to get some of these answers. But we also need to have Mr. Semino look at the grant in its entirety and the documents that come with them, because there's documents in there. And keep in mind, we signed all this stuff before. But it raises eyebrows every time I read it.
Yeah, that's why I'm a little leery about rushing to get it done.
Yeah, and I understand that.
Okay, well, any other questions about this? All right, well, we'll move it forward with caution. The next item listed on the agenda is the design review board changes. It's been determined that we're going to table that agenda item. I will just say that, in my opinion, these are any changes I think should come with two provisions. And this is just my opinion. But one, that any changes, because I was contacted by a member of the Design Review Commission, any changes to this commission, I believe, should go to the commission itself. I think they should have an opportunity to discuss them. And I don't think that happened. That's one thing I think should happen. The other thing is, because this will require a public hearing, I think we need to delay this until we're meeting in person again. Again, this is my opinion about how this should move forward. That we allow the Design Review Commission to review any changes, and then that we wait until we can have because we know the public hearings we have in a virtual environment are not very good. I mean, I don't think they serve the purpose that they're intended to.
I'll try not to take that personally, Rob.
No. I'm just saying the technology really doesn't give us the opportunity to hear in real time what people's concerns are and actually have a dialogue with people. It's just that somebody can send an email or whatever. But anyway, the reason I say that we should wait is because I don't know that any of this stuff is impending, like there's anything needed to be done right away. So that's my suggestion, and I didn't initiate this, so wherever this came from, that's the message I would like to send back. That we allowed
the design review board. The design review board did discuss it, and although I did not attend last month's meeting, this was their handwriting, their penmanship. So they did put this together. And one of the things it's driving is it gets harder and harder to find committee members to serve on these boards and commissions. And this committee had, I think, 8 or 9. So that was the intent, to reduce it, open it up a little bit more. and reduce the number, open it up a little bit more. And sometime, I don't know if it was 2 o'clock or before lunch, there was a couple members that wanted to revisit it. So I believe Thursday, actually, they're going to revisit this document and possibly make a couple more changes to it. But also, there are a couple members whose term expires, and before they get reappointed, now's a chance to make changes to the board.
Do we have a process for like putting it out to the public that we have the boards and commissions out there, that, you know, where it gives people the opportunity where we could say, you know, these boards have openings coming up. If you're interested, submit your name and contact information, or just something to put it out there so that more people from the public realize that they can show an interest and get in. Because I feel like I was fortunate in that I knew about some different boards and things over the years, so I was able to get involved. But I feel like there's so many people that don't even realize that it's the residents, it's the public, that we want to sit on these things. I didn't know how it's announced, or if it is, or if it's an invitation, or.
I think it depends. There have been times when it's been published in the paper as an article. Certainly, like when the charter review goes out, that's pretty prominently advertised in the paper, because it is hard to get people to serve. Otherwise, it's often just word of mouth. You know, who we know collectively, the mayor knows because he appoints many of these people.
So is any of
I
this,
think maybe we should list the members all on our website, and maybe prominently on our homepage list when an opening occurs.
I think
we have, I'm sorry, Cheryl, I was going to say, we have the website and we're not using it for that. And that would be a great opportunity for people to go and see when terms expire, what needs to be filled, what commissions there are. Because I guarantee if I walk next door and ask my neighbors, they wouldn't even know what commissions are available. Yeah. So to be able to look and see, so that if someone's interested in possibly volunteering for something, they can see what's available just by going to look at our webpage.
A lot of times that if somebody wants to be involved, they'll reach out, and they'll either reach out to one of us, or they'll make a phone call to City Hall and ask, how do I get involved? And then usually that gets funneled to the mayor. So if somebody wants to get involved, usually they take that step. Now, I do agree it does need to, you know, have that to make it easier, you know, on our website. But most cases, people that want to get involved will make a phone call and ask, how do I get involed?
It would be
That's
nice
just
though to have it, to have it posted on our website, so that we know what commissions and stuff there are. We had a baby girl. I'll be right back.
Congratulations.
Hey.
Congratulations.
I think we do need to have that on the website, as well as on our website, the calendar. I think that all the different boards and commissions should have that on the city's calendar of events. The only thing that was on there as of today was our city council meetings and our committee meetings. Council of the whole wasn't even on there yet. And there were no boards or commission meetings listed on the events calendar. So that's something that definitely, I think if we put it out there and people see it, we might get people interested.
Well, I think at least to help the mayor out, if we, this is something I discussed with Christina, we could easily put together a PDF, again, with check boxes under what your interests are, letter of interest, or a box for text to fill. And at least you have them on file, but it makes the process easier. And again, if somebody's reaching out to Amy or another council person or somebody else in the administration, you can at least provide them something, even if you're not looking for a board member. But
Oh, sorry, Andrew.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I just got a message from someone who's watching us live, and they wanted me to let everyone know that a lot of people do not read the paper like they used to anymore. So yeah, probably our website would probably be that in social media would probably be the best way of doing it.
And these are things that don't cost any money and they're already up and running. So for us to be able to utilize them to their fullest potential makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Everybody's already clicked on their 4 articles for the month. So they don't want to click anymore. Yep.
Right?
Some of us actually pay subscription.
Well, even
I do too, but that's not everyone. Yeah.
I know. Trying to keep them in business. All right, so we're not going to talk about the substantive changes that were proposed. As Bob said, they've been withdrawn, but we look forward for them coming back. All right, so we'll move on since that's been tabled. The next item is the annual contract with quality control inspection. And this was in our packet, and I did check. And Bob, you can talk about more specifically what this is. I'll just let council know that what I see is an interesting 3% change. The per hour, regular per hour change went up 3% from about $58 to $60. But the overtime went down 3% for some reason, from like $90 to $87. So, but Bob, maybe you could explain, this is another annual thing we do, why it's important and what it is that we're going to contract for.
Well, over the years, we've used QCI for construction inspection and construction monitoring for projects that we didn't have the staff for. For instance, Dominion did a gas project the end of 19, and we had an inspector on site. Dominion reimbursed us for that cost, plus some administration costs. We've used Dominion for another underground fiber optic project and a Dominion project before that. This year, we have potentially AT&T coming into town, putting underground in the Diamond Acres subdivision. Pretty large project. We will want representation. The contract would be, well, not the contract, but the agreement with the AT&T project would be they would reimburse us for inspection costs. So this particular contract that is in front of you is locking in the rate, the terms and conditions in case we want to use quality control inspection for the calendar year 2021. So we have a contract on the shelf in case we need it. Then we don't have to worry about holding a project up, waiting for council to approve an ordinance for the mayor to sign.
Okay.
As far as budgeting, there is inspection service built into the budget. It's generically written inspection service. That would fall under this, at least to get us through a few weeks if we needed it, until we'd come back to get more money. And again, at that point, there would be an agreement with the utility company that they would reimburse us for the cost of the construction inspection.
Does anybody have any questions about what the contract involves? Okay. We'll go ahead and move this one forward. The last item on the agenda is about fences. And I know Bob sent the code, chapter 1436, about fences. I believe this was inspired by the fact that a recent Board of Zoning Appeals variance was granted for barbed wire fence. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but I think because I didn't look through in any detail what you sent, but I think the idea is that the fence code doesn't differentiate between residential and commercial property, and perhaps there should be a differentiation. Is that the gist of it?
Well, that's one item that I had stated in the email over the last 11 years dealing with fences. Our code is a general fence code. As you said, it doesn't differentiate between residential and commercial. For whatever reason, our fence code states that fences in a front yard can only be 3 feet high. I've had fence companies tell me recently that that's not a common size. A common fence is 4 feet. So it's, in essence, it turns into a special order type situation. And so listening to that, one of my proposals is to allow 4 feet high in the front yard, as long as it's either chain link, wrought iron, vinyl, something that's see-through. And then I called out minimum opening, vertical openings kind of like a picket fence that has openings, that sort of thing. You know, there's a lot of classy fences in front yards that, you know, serve the purpose of the resident, be it keep the dog in or keep people from cutting corners or getting, you know, staying off the property, but yet they don't detract from the neighborhood. Again, that's my opinion.
Well,
Everybody has their opinion.
But
So
as
that's
far,
an item that we,
I'm sorry. Speaking of which, you know, the barbed wire fence, yeah, I believe
well,
something
let's
needs.
hang on. We're not there yet. We're not
Okay,
there yet. Hang
I'm
with
just
me, hang
looking
with
at it.
me.
Yeah,
I'm just going to run down. Well, I'm just,
so you're
you know,
going to go
one
to
of the
work,
other
right?
items in our code,
Okay,
I'm going to just zip down here in order in a second. And again, this is
Okay.
just so you guys can think about it, digest it. Nothing that I plan on passing this month.
no, but I want to
One of
keep
the
it,
other
I'd
things
like
we
to,
don't directly spell out that,
And Bob, you don't, I
Go ahead.
looked through what you sent. It's not specific. You have notations in there that are like placeholders for actual language. So it does need more development. But you're just going over the general ideas of
Sure.
what you want to change. Go ahead, keep going.
Right. And again, reviewing zoning for fences over the years, some of the items that I come up with, our code doesn't spell out where a fence can be 6 feet high. So I want to add in the code that it can be 6 feet high from the front corner to the rear. And then also the confusing part is if a person is on a corner lot, our code per 127808 states if you're on a corner lot, you have 2 front yards. So I want to put that in the code. And then our code mentions informal plantings. So I want to scratch that and just use the word trees. Trees can be higher than 6 feet, but bushes, hedges, and whatever that other word is, I guess it's hedges. Bushes, hedges, I guess they're the same thing or similar. Again, those would be maintained at 3 feet high according to what's currently in the code. And then visibility at intersections. I had a couple people from my office look at this over, draw a picture to see what it meant to them. I don't like the way it's currently written, and I'm going to change that a little bit. So I'm not ready to write in stone the visibility at intersections part yet, but I'll get there. But basically, I want the common person to be able to read it and understand why we're telling them their bushes can only be 2 feet high on a corner. And it has to do with visibility of a motor vehicle, seeing diagonally that a car is coming at them, whether they have a stop sign or a red light, or even a child on the sidewalk for that matter. Okay, Amy, we can get into barbed wire fences. So as I said, the code does not differentiate residential or commercial. So as the code is currently written, barbed wire can be installed as long as it's 4 feet high. Fortunately, over the years, I've not had a resident ask to have a fence, a barbed wire in a red district. But I can tell you, I've dealt with a lot of knuckleheads, and it really surprises me that I haven't. Because there are some people that they truly don't like their neighbors and they want to keep people off their property. I want to differentiate the fact that there is no barbed wire permitted in a residential district. And then also we need to look into commercial industrial areas that abut residential districts.
yeah,
And at minimum that the barbed wires. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just, go ahead. I
Somebody
didn't
talking?
mean to. It was me. I said, don't worry, keep going. I'll wait to bring that up because as I was reading that, oh no, where did it go? Keep talking, Bob. I'm sorry. I lost where it says no more than 3 strands of barbed wire shall be utilized on a fence. And I think that too should be determined on the area and the reason. 3 barbed wire strands can be sometimes, I think, too much. And I don't think we should, set that as 3.
The code, the current code says no more than 2 strands, but the fence companies, the standard for a fence company, the way the diagonal bars are put on the fences, whether they're vertical or diagonal, have a place for 3 strands of barbed wire. That's just a standard fence company installation. Yes, they can leave one of those strands off. If it's 2, it's 2. I would like to think that our town is safe enough that we don't need barbed wire anywhere in our town.
Yeah,
However,
especially-
if you're a business owner hiding secrets, you might want it, I guess. But again, it's up to you guys.
yeah, this,
And
And I
if you
don't
want
know
to change
if
it
all
or leave it to 2 strands, that's fine.
I don't know.
Then
if all of
there's another
council-
section that currently.
Go ahead. It's hard to tell.
What's that?
We keep cutting out. So when I think you're done and you start talking and then we end up,
Oh.
so I'll wait till you're completely done
Oh.
before I say anything. Sorry.
I just took a breath, that's all. There's the last section of 07, barbed wire partition fences may be erected and maintained as provided in ORC. My note is this section of the ORC, which I looked into, it does not apply to municipalities outside city limits, and it deals with railroads. So I believe we should remove this section altogether from our code. I'm not sure why it was left in our code, but it was. All right, I rest. It's up to you guys.
So we're gonna start a zoning review when?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if all of council is probably aware of a situation that we just recently had, and that's kind of why some of this got brought up. We have an area on Day Street where a business was approved from BZA to put a barbed wire fence around the property. And it's a residential neighborhood that there's houses everywhere, around this with kids. And now we have neighbors who are extremely upset and, they're homeowners. They're not renters, they're homeowners, and their property value has probably decreased now since. And so there's some checks and balances that I think we need in regards to this. I know some of the residents, were mailed letters, but some of them say they did not receive them. So anyways, I think that maybe in the future, in a situation like this, that maybe the building department to email our council clerk, and that way to make sure we see what's going on, because I think in situations like this, we actually need to go knock on the door of these residents so that they are aware that this is going on, and not just use a letter for this. But there's a lot of this barbed wire thing has really got me a little upset, and I'm upset with the neighbors too. So that's kind of where all this was kind of coming from, for those of you who may not know.
Yeah, and to go off of what Amy was saying, just real quick, Rob. I talked to a number of the residents, and Chelsea should have sent out the letter that they signed with a number of the neighbors who were upset. Yeah. So I did call them. They were obviously upset that a barbed wire fence was being erected there, because I would take a guess that if it were to happen in Ward 4 or around Freedom Street that we were talking about, that it probably wouldn't happen. So I think that it was a misstep by our BZA board, and that's why I've asked Ginny in the past, and she has included me on all of the agendas. So I would encourage all of council to email and be asked to be included on the agendas for any of the committees that are being sent out. And again, looping back to what Christina said, this is why they should be on the website so that we're aware. Half of this, is coming back to communication. And I get, the argument, according to the minutes from the BZA, that he was concerned for his property, that he had thousands of dollars in coolers that were out there. But, you request the criminal activity that was going on from the chief, and I don't believe it rose to the level to grant this barbed wire fence. So I was concerned, across the street. Also, I just want to mention, when I talked to the individual on the phone, the first thing you see on the corner of Beecher and Day Street typically is kids' toys. So, yeah, having kids run around there, I understand it's 4 feet up, but still concerning. As they're growing, it just creates more problems than we need in an area that we highlighted in the community plan to build back some of these better, blocks. This goes against everything that's in that plan.
Absolutely. It looks like a prison. It's terrible.
And
So two things I want to request real quick. Number one, well, I guess just one thing from council, because really the only thing, as Rob explained, I believe in an email, if number one, they were notified, the individuals who live next to this place, that variance was granted 10 days prior to the BZA meeting. There's nothing we can do for recourse. So the only solution, and what I talked to Jen on the phone, was possibly just asking, and it's probably not likely, asking the business, we understand that you were granted this variance. Is there any chance that you might forego? And I understand there might be some other things with that, but you're looking at a residential neighborhood, along the hike and bike trail. I just think that a simple request like that might go a long way, maybe. So I'm asking council, is this something that you would sign on to, that we could draft and put out there? And I don't want an answer now, but maybe next Monday we can discuss something along those lines.
Yeah, I did stop by there last week, but I was unable to get a response. He must have been busy and did not hear me. And I did call him and did not get a message back, because I was going to try talking to him myself, since I do know him pretty good from shopping there myself. But I do agree. He may, I don't know. I don't know what he would say. I can't obviously speak for him, but I agree with Andrew. I think it's worth a chance, and that's the least I guess we can do at this point. I did talk a little bit with our law director today and told him about it when I did see him. He was going to look into it a little more. But again, I don't know if there's really anything we can do. We can hopefully learn from this and prevent something like this from happening anywhere else.
The other point too, that I don't want to leave out, that the individual who owns the business does not live in the city of Ravenna. So that was another concern.
No, he doesn't.
I have
Could
two
I have
questions.
okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
As
Christine.
far as the notices go, we know the Postal Service has been really
The
behind.
hearing was back in October.
It was in October.
Okay,
'Cause I
okay.
thought the same thing too.
That's what I
when
was thinking. And then the other thing I asked is, what has he done, the owner of the business, what else has he done as far as to secure his building other than to put up a barbed wire?
Can I just say that I don't think we want to relitigate what the BZA already did. I mean, I do have some concerns about this discussion. And by the way, I want to defend Bob here for a second, because he did send out an email about this. And I was even planning on attending that BZA hearing. I can't remember the specific reason, but I was not able, something else came up. But it was on my calendar and I was planning on attending, because Bob did send this out. He was concerned a barbed wire fence went up on around Freedom not too long ago, and then this was a second request. I'm not also sure, and Bob, you can clarify this. I think was it just the third strand? I mean, this, regardless of what the BZA decided, a barbed wire fence could have gone up anyway. Is that not correct?
The CNC meet came first with the barbed wire request, and then the Freedom Street was a month later. In fact, the Freedom Street proposal, I actually held him off until BZA. I told him BZA was hearing a similar proposal to hold off and bring it next month, and that's what Freedom Street ended up doing. But with regard to CNC meet, they were permitted. Based on our code, I could permit them to install the fence and barbed wire along the east and the north property line.
Okay.
But his request was along Day Street and Beecher, 6 feet high along the right of way. And the way our code is currently written, barbed wire shall not be placed along the right of way.
Right.
So that was one of his variances. He wanted 3 foot variance for height and barbed wire along Beecher and Day Street. And in the end, BZA granted those variances.
And I want to
Yeah.
clarify
So
too,
very similar to then. Go ahead.
just real quick. I didn't mean to sound like I was laying this at Bob's feet, because that certainly
No.
wasn't my
No,
intent.
no. I just
Bob was
wanted the
against
record to
it.
be clear that, I mean, what we're asking for is a little better communication, and I think they did a pretty good job. So I don't, I'm not opposed to having more formal, communication in the future. But the other thing I just want to mention is we do need to be careful. We talked not too long ago, I don't know, I wasn't looking at my watch, about getting people to volunteer and participate in our government, through boards, and, well, this is a board and I was on this board. And I don't think, I think we need to be careful about going around the authority of the Board of Zoning Appeals and taking some form of quote unquote action. I mean, if we're going to rely upon these boards, they're going to make decisions we don't always agree with. And that's what we grant them, right? We grant them that authority.
Well, I will say we were able to allocate funds as Parks and Rec, and that was torn away not too long ago too. So we don't always agree with the boards, but we can go back and I definitely disagree with this decision. So we're here to discuss just that. I'm standing by. I'm not going to say that we're going to legally dispute anything, but I'm saying
no, I understand. I completely understand where you're coming from, and I'm just saying we need to be careful about the message we send to those we empower on these boards. That we're not looking over their shoulder all the time. That we have some respect for the decisions they make. But so I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying as what maybe council should do. I just want to make sure we're not always in conflict and questioning the outcome of boards and commissions that are duly appointed. That was the only comment I wanted to make. So,
well, look, I'll
and
end
there
with
are
this.
extenuating circumstances. I grant that.
And
We get the phone calls.
And
I know.
Well, and I'll end with this, that it's communication, that we've talked about all year long, going back since 2017, since I've been elected, it's always been constant communication. It's a two-way street. So, I think there's a little bit of responsibility on the board of, I understand they sent the letters, but responsibility both ways. Not saying they did anything wrong, but I'm just saying that there is responsibility for us to be communicating with residents and vice versa.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. I definitely appreciate that.
And I appreciate also those individuals who are watching the meeting that live next door to this, that have to stare out their window and look at it. I can appreciate that and the anger that they're probably feeling at this moment.
Because I know how I would feel if it was in my neighborhood. I would be outraged as well. So,
well, it's weird because we're trying to explain that, yes, it was approved by the BZA, but we don't approve that. That's
right.
The difference. And that's something that communication to our residents on what council actually does compared to any of our other boards or commissions, so that they understand the processes that we go through or what we even have a say in.
Yeah, and that's why when the letter came in, my suggestion was we let them know, because the letter indicated that we had made that decision and we did not.
Right.
That they know. But you're right. We're never going to pass on that knowledge to all of our residents. What we do, what the planning commission does, what the design review commission. I mean, it's fairly complicated, and we're always going to be the target, if not the mayor, when something like this rolls out. Anyway, are there any? This was a discussion mainly about enhancing our code with regard to fences, which still needs some work. And Bob's going to bring it back when that work gets done.
But I want to comment about that even though it's not finished, if anyone hasn't driven by there, I want to really encourage that, because I was by there toward the end of last week, spoke with a resident. I'll be going back, and it's worse than hideous, the outcome that it's going to be like. To agree with the comments, it's going to give a reminder of similar to an actual prison, the way that wire is going up. And it gives the impression of a city where there's a high crime rate, especially when you see where all the posts are, as many of them are around 3 different sides of the property. And he's going to have it so the fencing is up, so the only opening is where you can drive in and out. And to my knowledge, he had no cameras or anything of that nature. He had graffiti approximately 4 or 5 years ago. And that was the smallest thing right there. And if I lived there, I would be extremely upset when I'd seen that. It was actually horrifying. And it would be curious to know how much properties will be devalued because of this. And there's no practical reason for this. And I believe the zoning needs to be redone through the whole book is an expression, along with there's a lot of ordinances I believe as well that need to be looked at and redone as well, because there's no practical reason that this should have been let go. There's no reason in the city that there needs to be barbed wire anywhere. I mean, that's fine out of the city, out in the country somewhere to keep animals in. But this is worse than absurd, the way that that's going to be. And it wouldn't surprise me, we hear a lot more of it from those residents, not just on Beecher, but Day Street as well. And the worst thing outside of that was a minor thing. There's a neighbor that has kids in the yard. They just have toys outside. And that's small compared to this. I'll be nice and say just ridiculous thing right there.
Well, and I think Cheryl mentioned it earlier, the review of our zoning code may be well overdue. We have been, being, when it comes to enhancing our code, been very reactive. Barbed wires go up and now we want to change the code to prevent that from happening in the future. It would be nice if we had a more comprehensive, proactive approach. Of course, that takes a lot of time and planning, and during a pandemic, it's hard to manage to do just about anything proactive these days. So we'll keep that on the radar, and that's something I've suggested for many years, that our planning. I think cities should regularly review their zoning code and see where they're deficient, where they're out of date, and so forth. But this has been a pretty long meeting, and I don't think we want to engage in that discussion tonight.
Well, that's true, but it just needs to be addressed, and I encourage anyone that hasn't to drive by there and to really get a visual.
Well, I think that's why Bob's brought this to our attention, that he's going to make these changes, and we'll hopefully avoid this kind of problem in the future. Okay, anything else on fences? If not, then Mayor, do you have a management update?
No, being the farmer that's in me, I look at fences a little differently. That's a cyclone fence with barbed wire around the top is what's going in there. It makes it sound, when you say barbed wire fence, it's from the ground up, it's barbed wire, and it is not. That's what you might find out in the country. As Paul mentioned, to keep livestock in. I won't allow it on my farm. And when I was younger, we used it. It was cheap. It isn't worth tearing the animals up on that, and we won't have it on the property. So there's a lot of sentiment. But I have to also go along with your comments, Rob. This BZA has been an excellent board, and they've functioned for years. I think they are as much a victim of the way the code is written with this thing, and there were people on the board that were concerned about this. I had one person come and see me, and on the second one, I think one gentleman did vote no. With that. In terms of availability of spots on boards right now, I don't have the resignation yet, but I have one gentleman that will be retiring from the BZA and also the civil service. But I have not received it, so I cannot advertise that. The only other opening we had, and I have not had an appointment on that, and probably won't find anybody who wants to do it after tonight, it's on the BZA with that. So that's the only board that has openings on it now, but we're at the time of year when people, if they decide they're going to quit, they will be telling us. We actually, Julie keeps files on all of this stuff, and it's no problem for us to get together information. Now, BZA is usually listening to things like changes in side setbacks. Somebody wants to build a garage, and the way the lot's laid out, it needs to be a little closer to the line. The neighbors get the letters, or they come in with letters from the neighbors saying they approve, they don't have a problem with this. And that's the kind of thing they normally get involved with. It's not usually fencing, especially of this type, because this is the type of stuff you might see in a commercial area. But hindsight's 100%. But we do have to look at moving ahead and updating our zoning code has aged, and it's not current, and we need to bring it up to date.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
Oh, did you have more?
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay, thank you. With that, I will adjourn the planning committee meeting at 7:16.